We've got a news alert now. We are just about 14 hours away from the hotly anticipated release of the Mueller report. We're told the DOJ will release it sometime between 11 a.m. and noon Eastern time. That's 8 and 9 for you in the West. Democrats already up in arms, and here is why. Tomorrow at 9:30 in the morning, Attorney General William Barr and Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein, old Cracklin' Rosie, they're going to give a press conference. President Trump hinted that he may give one too. Why wouldn't he? Democrats say it is unfair that the press conference comes before the release. Isn't that how it always works? At least for the Kardashians. Now they'll complain about anything. As far as what is inside the Mueller report, we don't know yet. Beyond what was in the Attorney General's 4-page summary, we know Mueller found no collusion with Russia and that he did not make a conclusive decision on obstruction of justice. The report tomorrow will have a number of redactions, as you know, involving national security, grand jury testimony. Those things will not be made public. And, of course, commentators on both sides are going to have a field day. No matter what it says, a lot of hot takes tomorrow. Get ready for it. Wear your oven mitts when you're reading it on your phone. Today, the president led the charge on a radio interview. Watch.
What's happened is unthinkable with Strzok and Page and Comey and McCabe and all of these characters and Brennan and Clapper and you know, you look at what Comey did as the director of the FBI. It's a disgrace. It's a disgrace to our country. And I think that I hope I'm going to be able to put this down as one of my great achievements, actually.
One of the great achievements. The president was also asked about claims the Fed spied on those in his presidential campaign, more specifically, who was responsible. And he did not hold back. Listen again.
Is there any doubt in your mind that President Obama at least had knowledge of everything that was going on?
Well, I'd rather save that for another interview with you and I will do that. But
do you promise that it's me that you save that in?
Because it's such a big statement to make. But there are those that say, how is it possible? And how is it possible that he didn't know? And I guess you have to put yourself in that category, and I can put myself in that category. I mean, we're talking about pervasive, horrible things that were happening, and it would certainly be hard to believe that he didn't know what was going on.
No, he knew. He absolutely knew. So how did the Mueller investigation make people feel about the president? We've got a brand new Fox News poll that claims 10% feel a little better. 17% feel worse, 65%, no surprise. They say there was no change. So will tomorrow be a big win for the president or for Democrats who want to take him down? Here is tonight's panel. Let's meet them. She's an attorney and America Rising PAC senior advisor. Alexandra Wilkes is back, along with Fox News contributor and host of the Richard Fowler Show. Richard Fowler, normally fighting with Ned Ryan, but not tonight. He's here in the flesh. And from the Greg Gutfeld Show, where she serves as correspondent and National Review online reporter, it is Kat Timpf. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for having me. What a hump day. My goodness, it is Mueller Eve. This is a magical night for many in D.C. What can we expect? For those who are expecting.
I think we can expect a lot of hot air coming out of Washington, D.C., because as you mentioned, everybody's going to have a take on this. But I think that the most important take was what the summary was that Attorney General Barr released from the beginning, which he said the top line conclusions, which there were no collusion and also no, charges brought on obstruction. And so I think that those were sort of the things that stuck, and everything else that's going to come back in this report is just going to be details to sort of fill it in. And I think it's going to kind of get lost in the ether a little bit.
And what are you most looking forward to in the report? Is it the areas of obstruction that Bob Mueller was sort of hung up on and really couldn't come to a conclusion of his own, even though as a prosecutor he's essentially charged with deciding whether or not to charge the president?
I'm actually interested in the entire report to see what it says. To see
Are you going to sit down and read the whole thing?
I probably will.
Wow.
I mean, I do read.
I'm going to say I did.
Yeah, exactly.
No, I mean, I actually read a lot of these things. I read executive orders. I mean, I read to see exactly what was. He's been 22 months investigating this, and so I want to see what's in it. I think what's very interesting is that you're going to have a press conference about a report that nobody's going to have seen yet. So I'm not really sure what the press is going to ask you when they haven't seen the report, so they haven't digested it yet. They're not really going to be able to ask any intelligent questions about the report because they haven't seen said report to ask questions.
Maybe it's like previews for Broadway shows. So, they're going to have a press conference, and if he gets any really hard questions, So you can go back and like redact a couple more things and then release it.
Yeah, I honestly don't think that anyone needs to read it because nobody's really reading it to figure out what they think about it. 65% say it didn't change, as you mentioned. That doesn't surprise me at all. I think that people who are on the right are going to say, look, no collusion, no obstruction. People on the left are going to find something, anything, no matter how small it is, and focus on that and say that, oh, look, this was the wrong decision.
I think you're absolutely right. They're going to look at those details and magnify them and say, this is proof of what we've been talking about the whole time.
Yeah,
and I think, you know, when we talk about obstruction, there will be things that the president has done that are so weird and so uncharacteristic for the president of the United States because he is unlike any other president. So no one really knows how to quantify that or how to describe it. And is it illegal? I really think history is going to be the judge. I think we're too close to what has happened and what's going on.
I think you're right there, Kenny. I think the other thing that's going to be very interesting is that a lot of folks who testified, we're going to see some of this testimony, and a lot of these folks who have now left the White House, right, and they're part of their job requires them to have close proximity or close relations with their lobbyists, whether they are in advocacy groups. We're going to find out what they said about the president, and some of it's going to be very not nice things. And so,
yeah, and there are people who are quite worried who work in the White House who received those subpoenas, but 500 people were subpoenaed for this special counsel report. And
at least it's coming out, though. I'm glad that it's coming out because I want to see it because I paid for it. And I feel like if you pay for something, you should be allowed to read that thing.
I agree.
Well, and it'll be interesting to see how Democrats react to all of this because I think that there was this sense after the summary was released that they had gotten out of their skis a little bit when it came to the whole collusion issue. And there was some backtracking and some, you know, like there's been this sort of cover for the last couple of weeks, like we need to see the report, we need to see the report. And if we see just continued obstruction and subpoenas coming from Jerry Nadler's committee, I don't think that that's going to bear too well for swing state Democrats who are looking to hold on to their seats.
No, and Jerry Nadler has been tweeting about, you know, he's so mad that there's a press conference before him, but it's not like there's a press conference 6 weeks before the report is going to be released. It's 90 minutes. He's going to have access to the full thing, just like the president's team. And so Nadler's committee and people in his caucus and people on his staff are doing the exact same thing that the president's attorneys are doing. They're separating it out to all the people sitting in the same room, and they're going to summarize different parts of the report.
It's also going to be interesting to see how Republicans react to it, because there's going to be some things in this report that says that the White House made some mistakes.
I'll tell you how they're going to react. No collusion, no obstruction.
I think you're right, and I think that this is going to sort of paint a picture saying, are Republicans going to not call this president out for engaging in bad behavior?
You know what's going to happen tomorrow? The report's going to come out, and Hillary Clinton will be sworn in as the 45th president, and this entire thing will be nullified. All right, we're going to see the panel again in just a few minutes. First up, let's go to the immigration battle. The mayor of Yuma, Arizona, now declaring a state of emergency, claiming the migrants pouring across the border are an imminent threat, because he says his town simply doesn't have the resources to manage them. At the same time, Attorney General Bill Barr, he is ordering judges to deny bail to some migrants who seek asylum. The order would keep them in jail indefinitely, but will likely be challenged in court. And just to show you how big the immigration issue is, a brand new Fox News poll shows 21% of voters consider it to be the most important issue facing the country. The economy, the only other topic that reached double digits. That's second right there. Joining me now from Yuma, Arizona, where he just crossed the border illegally into Mexico, oddly enough. It is Wisconsin Republican Congressman and House Financial Services Committee member Sean Duffy. Welcome back to the program, Congressman.
It's good to be with you, Kennedy. Thanks for having me on.
So please tell me, why, when Democrats and Republicans visit the border, why do they have such different experiences?
Well, I think one of the problems is you don't get enough Democrats coming to the border, because it's pretty clear when you go down here. We were on the border last night. We're going again tonight. You have hundreds of people who are coming across the border every single night. And the mayor of Yuma's right. He can't, I mean, his community can't take all the influx of people. And so I think if more Democrats came, they would see the light and say, this is less about Donald Trump and more about American security. We've got to work with Republicans and find a solution to this massive problem.
So certainly the president's base is very agitated about this issue. When the president was first sworn into office, there was a record low of illegal immigrants apprehended at the border, and now that has obviously surged. The president is still there. The ideas are still there. Is it the fear that because the rhetoric is ramping up and there is some funding for a border wall, that the border really will be sealed and people are just trying to get in before the door shuts?
Listen, I think right now, Kennedy, you have an open border. So where we were last night, there was no impediment to people coming across a 20-foot span of the Colorado River. They walk up the embankment. It's an easy walk. The water's to their knees.
So if you're there,
and
is
they come in
CBP
and are
there as
apprehended
well?
by. So this was during the day when we went and saw, migrants weren't coming across. But at night, yeah, they were there. We saw 30 individuals who were caught. And by the way, Kennedy, half of them are little kids. I mean, you have 8-month-old, 5-year-old, 3-year-old, 7-year-old kids that are sitting out there at 11:30 at night, and it's cold. And they made a horrific journey to our border. And we have a policy that incentivizes them to make this tough journey. If we could fix immigration reform, and if Democrats sat at the table, instead of paying the cartels $10,000 a person to shepherd them up to our border, they could buy a $1,000 plane ticket and fly here if they had a work visa.
It's much easier to overstay your visa.
Simpler process.
I agree with you completely there. So let me ask you, who should get asylum, and why is the asylum process so confusing?
Well, because we've had such a rush of people to our border, and the migrants have been told if they make the certain claims that they're in fear of their life, they'll be allowed to come into the country, they'll be released, and their hearing won't be from 2, 3, 5 years down the road, and they won't show up for it.
What proof does someone have to have in order to make an asylum claim?
I think it's a legitimate claim on their life, I believe. And I guess I haven't looked at that specific portion on how the judges analyze that. But I think Attorney General Barr is right. If he says we're going to take away bail for those who come across unlawfully and not through the points of entry, we're going to deny you bail. What it does is it takes away the incentive for the migrants that come to our border. And another part of this, what we learned last night, is it's really not the Border Patrol, which, by the way, they're great people. The Border Patrol is not controlling the border. The cartels are controlling the border. Down here in Yuma, it's about a 122-mile stretch of our border. And on average, they have 10 people, Kennedy, 10 Border Patrol agents patrolling 122 miles. And so what the cartels do is they flood our border with illegal migrants. When they're captured by Border Patrol, the Border Patrol has to leave the border and process them. It takes, like last time we were there when they caught 30 people, it's about 45 minutes to an hour per person.
Yes,
they're off the border.
This is new. I want to go back to I want to go back to asylum just for a little bit, Congressman.
They send the drugs in after the people when the border's open.
Yeah, but they also send a majority of the drugs through the legal ports of entry. That's how the drugs are getting in here. Why the drugs are getting in here, that's a different issue. We can actually clean that one up.
No.
Extending the drug war isn't going to do anything about that, because you've seen hundreds of thousands of deaths and billions of dollars wasted. But let's talk a little bit about asylum. No, I want you to answer this, because
your point is wrong on that, though. Your point is wrong on drugs.
My point is absolutely right, and the data will bear that out time and time again. However, back to the asylum issue, you are one of the people in Congress who is most passionate about this issue, and you don't know how the asylum process works. How on earth is someone who's trying to come into this country supposed to know how it works?
Kennedy, because they don't have legitimate claims for asylum. Their lives aren't threatened. They're coming for the American dream. They want a better opportunity in America as opposed to Guatemala or El Salvador or Honduras. That's where they're coming. But you have Americans down there that coach them on what they have to say to make a claim for asylum, to get in and get released, and then they don't show up.
Well,
so
then the federal government has to do a better job of helping people who need help and keeping out people who are going to do bad things. That is the job of the federal government.
So, Kennedy, it's our job to protect American citizens. And what we have to do is take away the incentive that allows people to come to our border and think they'll be caught and released and they come in for free. Take the incentive away and people will not come. And that means build a wall, give us more agents, give us more technology. But by the way, you can put all the technology and sensors on the border, but you're going to need thousands of people on the border to actually catch the folks that come across through your sensors and cameras. You need a wall to slow them down. I made this point at the Democrat convention in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Guess what they're going to have around the perimeter of the convention in Milwaukee?
Cotton candy machines?
And they're going to funnel people through points of entry, and they won't get in unless they have a ticket. Why does it work for the Democrat convention, but it won't work on our southern border? It will work, and so if Democrats would get on board, we could resolve all these problems. And by the way, Kennedy, then we could actually fix the whole immigration system, deal with the people who are here, deal with a work visa system to allow people to come into the country lawfully and work, and then do an E-Verify system.
Over staying their visas than you do coming over the border. You've got, a phenomenal number of people who are overstaying visas because they know once they're in, it's a great place to be. I don't blame them, but, the federal government, I think that we are within our rights to expect you in Congress and those in charge to do a better job of figuring out what needs to be done and how best to allocate the resources that we have.
But Kennedy, you have a group of people in Congress like myself who are trying to actually work with Democrats and secure the border.
When
Democrats
gives me great
are more
hope.
concerned about a win for Donald Trump, and they're saying, I'm willing to let the border be open because I hate Donald Trump.
If you guys figure this out now, you take it away as an issue for the president in 2020. That's what I would tell Ben Cardin and all the other dum-dums that you're dealing with.
But I would tell you this. Nancy Pelosi controls the House, and you need Democrats in the Senate to pass a bill. So you know that all too well.
I do.
Let's get it done,
Duffy,
Kennedy. Come on.
Yeah, I would love to see something get done. Congressman Duffy, thank you very much for your time, and stay safe down there.
Thanks for having me.
Very good. Coming up, you won't believe what Illinois State Attorney Kim Foxx texted prosecutors about Jussie Smollett. Wait, didn't she recuse herself? Why is she texting? The panel returns to discuss next. The Jussie Smollett case has had so many twists and turns it could have been written by Dan Brown. Newly released documents show Chicago State's attorney Kim Foxx was communicating with her staff after she recused herself from the case, reportedly texting her forever assistant, even going as far as questioning the number of charges against Smollett, saying, quote, "So I'm recused, but when people accuse us of overcharging cases, 16 counts on a class 4 felony becomes Exhibit A," to which the assistant replied, "Agreed." She then went on to reference singer R. Kelly, texting, quote, "Pedophile with 4 victims, 10 counts, washed up celeb who lied to cops, 16. On a case eligible for deferred prosecution, I think it's indicative of something we should be looking at generally. Just because we can charge something doesn't mean we should." To which he again replied creatively, "Agreed." In other words, she admits Smollett lied, but still wants the charges dropped. The shenanigans in this story are pretty hard to believe, but then again, so is the star of the story. Should we be surprised at all? I don't know. The party panel is back. Alexandra, Richard, and Kat. Alex, I will start with you. You are a lawyer, by gum. Kim Foxx says she recused herself, but then her spokesperson said she only colloquially recused herself, not formally. And I didn't realize there was a distinction for a state's attorney.
And first, a non-lawyerly thought here. Anytime you're trying to say that, well, he's better than R. Kelly, I think that you're kind of losing the argument in that way. But from a legal perspective, I think that recusal means, the spirit of what recusal is, and that would be not texting your assistant about the nature of the charges or a recommendation or any kind of thoughts or opinions about that, because it could appear that you're trying to interfere in the case. And then
she'd already spoken with Jussie Smollett's family.
Right, and it's the appearance of impropriety that as a law enforcement officer, you're looking to avoid in these situations.
The whole thing is really, really funny. And what do these docs show? I mean, we got these because of a FOIA request. What do they say to you?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a very, very interesting case, and I think the more and more it sort of unravels itself, the more messier it becomes. And I think, sadly, what we see here is, as this case unfolds, it speaks to the fact that there are actually real hate crimes happening, right? So in Houston, there's a man who uses hookup apps to lure gay men in and assault them and rob them, and that's the case that we should be talking about tonight and how we prevent that from happening.
Yes,
Instead,
but then
we're talking about this.
Those cases become higher profile. People go, it's probably just another hate crime hoax like Jussie Smollett.
No, I completely agree, and I think that there's
that's
so
a great disservice to
I think there's so many states in this country where you can get married at 12 o'clock, be fired from your job at 2 o'clock, and be kicked out of your house at 5 o'clock if you're LGBTQ, and I think that is the fight that we should be fighting. Instead, we're having a conversation about text messages.
We're having a conversation about justice that is not meted out equally.
I don't think that they're mutually exclusive either.
No.
Go ahead.
I think that there were victims here, which you alluded to, and saying that people who actually are victims of hate crimes, which is a real thing that really happens, people are going to be less likely to believe those people because of what he did. And recusing yourself, and I just love the way she started that, saying, "So I know I'm recused, but it's like someone when they're like, I'm not a sexist, but I really hate all women." I think that it's kind of what it reminded me of.
Yeah.
But the texts were bizarre. The Avenatti thing was also great.
Oh, I forgot about that. that. Yes,
Yeah.
Michael Avenatti almost entered into the case to
be on TV.
represent Jussie Smollett.
Or to be
attackers.
on TV. It must be killing him that he can't be on TV anymore. I checked his Instagram just to see if maybe he was posting like shirtless selfies or something, because that wouldn't have surprised me to see him like selling flat tummy tea or something, anything to get attention, because this man just can't get enough. And if that's coming from me, that's pretty bad.
Oh, he's been so horrible, that Michael Avenatti. But it really would have been the completion.
I mean, this is just the case is a very interesting one, because it's just there's so many errors all over the place, and there's nobody with clean hands. You have a horrible.
He could still be charged with
of course.
mail fraud.
I mean, you have a horrible
That'd be great. And then he could go to jail with Felicity Huffman and Lori Loughlin.
There's horrible
This is very
all over.
exciting.
It's horrible all over. You have a horrible mayor, a horrible police department. It's just a mess.
Well, that's why we don't live.
Plus, the Bible says don't lie.
Pretty much.
Yep.
Yeah. You know what it says about
Heard it here
lying.
first, folks.
It's against it. Panel returns a little bit later. Polls consistently showing the same front runners polling away from the field in the 2020 Democratic race, but so many others still running. What do the lesser-known candidates get from the attention and being in the race? My memo on an official Democratic presidential candidate is here tonight. We will sit down and talk. That's next. Well, we got some good news and some bad news for people hoping to see Robert Kraft's junk. Earlier today, Palm Beach County state attorneys announced that they'd release the video that allegedly shows the Patriots owner getting a massage at a funny parlor. All right. Prosecutor cited Florida's open information laws, but now a Florida judge has temporarily blocked the release. A hearing scheduled for April 29th to determine the fate of the tape that would have already been destroyed had Kraft agreed to plead guilty. What a justice system. All right, let's see what the panel has to say about that. Alexandra, Wilkes, Richard Fowler, and Kat Timpf. So, Richard, we really have to clean up these massage parlors. It's just awful what people are doing with their business.
We do, and I think that obviously there's clearly some sex trafficking happening here. And
Is there?
No, there wasn't.
No,
There was
actually,
no
they didn't find any
that.
sex trafficking.
Oh, well, either way, we have to clean up what's happening in these massage parlors.
Right, exactly. Yeah, that's my question. So you have two adults,
correct,
participating in a consensual transaction.
Right.
One's giving, one's receiving. They know what they're doing.
Right.
They know what's on the line.
Yeah, I cannot wrap my mind around why sex work is illegal. I really can't wrap my mind around it.
There's a market for it.
There's a market for it, and there's people who are choosing to be sex workers, and that works for them, and people want to visit those sex workers and pay them, and that works for them. This affects me not at all. This affects nobody but those people involved at all. I have no understanding of why this is illegal. I think it's an injustice that it's illegal, and I don't think we need to clean them up. I think that we should allow there to be dirty parlors if there's a market for it.
I think parlors would actually be cleaner if all of this were legal and above board.
Yes.
There are a lot of places I wouldn't go. There are a lot of things that I wouldn't do. There are a lot of ways I wouldn't spend my money, and this is just one of the many. But I do think it's weird that a judge allowed police to go in and put cameras all over the place. And,
in a free country.
And video this stuff. And then because it's Florida, that gets released. There's something wrong about that.
There's a really interesting interplay of freedom of information laws here, because at the federal level, it's a lot stricter. For example, Congress exempted themselves from FOIA, so we don't get to see all of their emails and all of their details. But at the state level, it's more expansive, and Florida is among the states that have the most expansive laws. So, I think that in these cases, what you're looking to do is you're looking to see, does the public interest outweigh somebody's private interest? And in this case, I would have to say, because the case is not only still ongoing, but also because there's, an appeal out there that they should err on the side of not releasing the tape, because it would be so injurious to the reputation of the individual involved here.
I don't know. I think it's very patronizing to say that all women who do this are clearly sex trafficked.
No, I think you change our perspective on this, Kennedy, and I will say that, because I think there are those that are sex trafficked, and we've got to protect those. But if those who do it freely, I think they should be allowed to do it freely, like you have in Amsterdam, where there is laws that protect them, that allow them to.
Well, as Sammy Hagar said, hot damn in Amsterdam. Thank you all so much. Great to see everyone. Kat, Richard, and Alex. Top of the Storm is next.